Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vatican and World News.
In the headlines this Saturday, April 24th, Pope Francis stresses the importance of multilateral diplomacy for peace, prosperity and the common good of all. The prefect of the Congregation for the Oriental Churches marks 106 years since the Armenian genocide with the celebration of the Divine Liturgy. And Indian hospitals warn they are at breaking point as coronavirus cases numbers set a new record for a third consecutive day. In the Vatican, I'm Francesca Merlo. Pope Francis and the United Nations chief are stressing the importance of multilateral diplomacy for peace, prosperity and the common good of all, saying the pandemic has shown us how interconnected the global community is today. The two made the remarks on Saturday on the occasion of the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. Robin Gomes reports.
Pope Francis resorted to Twitter to underscore the need for multilateral diplomacy and cooperation for finding solutions to the world's problems. How do we prevent conflicts? No people, no social group can single-handedly achieve peace, prosperity, security and happiness. None, Pope Francis stressed. The lesson learned from the recent pandemic is the awareness that we are a global community, all in the same boat, he tweeted on Saturday. In a separate message for the April 24th annual day, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres urged all to renew their commitment to global multilateral solutions that deliver for people and planet. Like Pope Francis, he also noted that the COVID-19 pandemic has been a tragic reminder of how deeply connected we are, saying there is a clear and urgent need for concrete multilateral solutions. This, he said, needs to go far beyond the pandemic and must be based on common actions across borders for the good of all humanity, starting with the equitable distribution of vaccines as a global public good. Guterres also called for multilateral actions and solutions in other areas of transnational threats, such as the climate crisis, pollution, the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and the development of new technologies in the absence of agreed principles and norms. The International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace was established by the UN Assembly on 12 December 2018 and was first observed on April 24, 2019. Multilateralism, in the form of membership in international institutions, serves to bind powerful nations, discourage unilateralism, and give small powers a voice and influence that they could not otherwise exercise. I am Robin Gomes.
As the world marks the 106th anniversary of the Armenian genocide, Cardinal Leonardo Sandri joins Rome's Armenian community to recall what he called a stain on human history. The prefect of the Congregation for the Oriental Churches celebrated the Divine Liturgy on Saturday at the Pontifical Armenian College, as Devin Watkins reports.
Saturday marks the 106th anniversary of the Armenian genocide known as the Metz-Yagern, or the Great Evil Crime. To commemorate this tragic recurrence, Cardinal Leonardo Sandri celebrated the Divine Liturgy at the Pontifical Armenian College in Rome. In his homily, the prefect of the Congregation for the Oriental Churches called the Metz-Yagern a stain on humanity's history. But he added the Armenian people who fell victim to a systematic planned suffering did not lose the treasure of faith. Up to 1.5 million Armenian Christians lost their lives in what historians say was an ethnic cleansing carried out by the Ottoman Empire during World War I. In 2016, while visiting Armenia, Pope Francis called the tragedy genocide. This tragedy, this genocide, said the Pope on June 24th while speaking to Armenia's civil authorities, was the first of a deplorable series of catastrophes of the past century, made possible by twisted racial, ideological, or religious aims that darken the minds of the tormentors even to the point of planning the annihilation of entire peoples. During Saturday's Divine Liturgy, Cardinal Sandri recalled the pain inflicted upon the Armenian people, who endured inhuman violence to the point of death. Yet he praised their work ethic and intelligence as a people which produced saints like St. Gregory of Narek, who enlightened humanity far beyond the boundaries of Armenia. The Cardinal likened the Armenian genocide to the Shoah, which saw millions of Jews exterminated in concentration camps. He said tragedies such as these lead us to ask ourselves where God was. At times like these, he said, divine mercy comes to our aid through God's consolation. The Gospel gives us the consolation in considering that the sons and daughters of the Armenian people who fell victim to the extermination of 106 years ago are friends of God, conformed to the self-same existence of Christ. Cardinal Sandri concluded his homily recalling Jesus' parable of the wheat. The lives of our brothers and sisters, he said, was like that of Jesus, a grain of wheat which fell to the ground and in death gave life to the entire world, saving it. Their fruit endures, he said, and it is we in the world today who celebrate in the faith. I'm Devin Watkins.
Mexico's papal nuncio has visited a small town which is a drug cartel battleground epicenter, where this week an explosives drone attack wounded 2 police officers. James Blears reports about the church showing the Mexican people its unwavering support.
Papal Nuncio Monsignor Franco Coppola celebrated Mass in the town of Aguililla in the western state of Michoacán to support his beleaguered people, cut off from the rest of the country by feuding drug cartels who've dug trenches in roads and also barricaded them with stolen vehicles. The Jalisco New Generation cartel is feuding with the Michoacán family, allied with the United Cartels, to use the area as a drug smuggling route and a source of extortion from nearby iron ore mines. This week, 2 drones fitted with plastic explosives fell on 2 police officers. They were wounded but survived and were treated in hospital. Monsignor Coppola says that officials from the previous administration of President Enrique Peña Nieto had pleaded with him to stay silent because mention of violence from organized crime could damage the lucrative tourism industry, which is a major earner for Mexico. But he's stressing the duty of the church is to be on the people's side, so I want to be here. Bishop Cristobal Asensio Garcia, whose diocese includes this town, is praying for a change of heart by the cartels and conversion away from violence from their gunmen known as sicarios. Last year, 35,000 people were killed by the cartels nationwide. During Mexico's ongoing drug war, which started in 2006, more than 300,000 people have perished. The people of Aguililla greeted the nuncio with gratitude, holding white balloons in their hands and a hope in their hearts. For Vatican Radio, James Blears reporting.
Pope Francis on Saturday received in audience His Eminence Cardinal Marcello Semeraro, prefect of the Congregation for the Causes of Saints. During the audience, the Supreme Pontiff confirmed the conclusions of the ordinary session of the cardinals and bishops, members of the congregation, and decided to extend to the Universal Church the cult of Blessed Margaret of Città del Castello, inscribing her in the Book of Saints. During the same audience, the Pope also authorized the congregation to promulgate the decrees regarding the martyrdom of 12 individuals and the heroic virtues of 3 lay people. German Chancellor Angela Merkel on Saturday called on Germans to stick to tighter coronavirus restrictions imposed in areas with high infection rates over the weekend, saying the step was needed to break a 3rd wave of infections. Both chambers of Parliament approved the amendments to the Infection Protection Act earlier this week to give the federal government more powers to fight the 3rd wave in the pandemic. Cyprus will be forced into a strict lockdown next week after months of milder restrictions failed to slow the spread of the coronavirus, as Nathan Morley reports.
Cyprus is preparing to reintroduce a strict lockdown to stem the rapid spread of COVID-19 infections. Starting next Monday until May the 10th, the island will effectively shut down as the retail sector shutters and a curfew is enforced everywhere. At the start of the pandemic, Cyprus showed itself to be a regional leader in dealing with the crisis. But now the health minister says the number of new coronavirus cases has doubled in the past 2 weeks. New figures show the infection and hospitalization rate for younger people is on the increase, whilst the rate for those over 70 has stabilized. According to the local media, the capital Nicosia and the coastal resort of Larnaca have seen infection rates double in the past 7 days. From next Monday, the public will be allowed to go out just once per day after receiving permission by an SMS text message. A host of tougher new restrictions will also see shops shops close, with the exception of those selling food and other essential items. Furthermore, restaurants, cafes, pubs, barbershops and gyms will have to close, and civil service work will be done remotely. According to reports, advisers and ministers squabbled over how far the new regulations should be allowed to go. The latest lockdown comes as a bitter blow to the holiday and hospitality sector, which has been battered by the crisis. Many tourism businesses are struggling to stay afloat, whilst others have remained shuttered. Authorities have now confirmed that the national vaccination campaign will be accelerated by letting private doctors on the island administer the AstraZeneca vaccine. As Cyprus is preparing to shut down, Malta, meanwhile, has identified another 4 cases of the coronavirus variant, which was first found in South Africa. Malta has so far reported 30,129 cases since the outbreak of the pandemic. For Vatican Radio, this is Nathan Morley reporting.
Indian hospitals warned on Saturday that they are at breaking point as coronavirus case numbers set a new record for a 3rd consecutive day. Lydia O'Kane reports.
Another grim world record was set by India on Saturday as coronavirus infections rose by 346,786. The country is in a crippling second wave of the pandemic, and for a 3rd consecutive day, the number of cases have soared. The lack of medical oxygen continues to be a serious problem, especially in the capital New Delhi and worst-hit areas like Maharashtra. Hospitals in these areas are also reporting a lack of empty beds. As cases rise, so do the numbers of deaths. In the last 24 hours, there were 2,624. Making the headlines in an Indian newspaper was the story of how at least 20 COVID-19 patients had died overnight due to low oxygen pressure. With the situation at crisis point, hospitals are turning to social media to plead with authorities to boost supplies. At a conference on Friday, Delhi's Chief Minister appealed to Prime Minister Narendra Modi for oxygen to avert a tragedy in hospitals. Health experts argue that India became complacent in the winter when new cases were running at about 10,000 a day and seemed to be under control, lifting restrictions that allowed for the resumption of big gatherings. Others have also blamed a dangerous variant of the virus for the increase in infections. Apart from hard-hit areas such as New Delhi and Maharashtra, other parts of the country are feeling the pressure, with hospitals in Jaipur and Amritsar appealing for more oxygen. With the situation at crisis point, grieving families are being asked to wait to bury their dead as crematoriums across Delhi become full up. As this health crisis continues in India, the numbers speak for themselves. This country of around 1.3 billion has now recorded a total of 16.6 million cases, including 189,544 deaths. I'm Lydia O'Kane.
And finally, Palestinian militants in the Gaza Strip fired dozens of rockets into Israel on Saturday, drawing retaliatory airstrikes after nightly Ramadan clashes between Palestinians and Israeli police had resumed in Jerusalem. The pre-dawn exchange of fire broke months of relative quiet on the Israel-Gaza frontier, though it did not appear to signal a wider escalation after the military said it was not imposing any safety restrictions on Israelis living near the border. And that brings us to the end of this edition of Vatican and World News. For more on these and other stories, we invite you to visit our web portal at www.vaticannews.va, and you can also follow us on Facebook or on Twitter. My thanks go to Vincenzo Proto in studio. In the Vatican, I'm Francesca Merlo.